Alrighty, let's talk about Romantasy and all of these incredible books that really got me plugged in to the world of romance and fantasy, and talk about that as a mom who began reading back in 2024. And part of the reason why I started that journey back was because of these books. So let's get into it. Welcome to Pores and Prose. This is a booktube channel that is specifically cataloging and recapping my world as a mom. And with me always, you will find a cup of tea or coffee. Today is a perfectly dreary day in East Tennessee. So I figured what better way to create a video all about the books and book series, the genre, if you will, that got me back into the world of reading. So without further ado, cheers. Let's get into it. This is also a black Asian tea and it's so good. It's my little favorite tea to make in the afternoon. Okay, let's talk about all of these books. You gotta stay hydrated. So let's kind of scooch this one to the side, and we're gonna scooch this one also to the side. It might just be completely off angle with the camera, but whatever. Oh, I'm a mom, I can do what I want. So the first book that I read in 2024 that really got me back into reading was the book Fourth Wing. Now, I know some people are gonna see this book and they are just gonna go, what in the world? Why are we talking about this series? Some of you are gonna see this series and think, that's a great series. It's got some things with it, some editing issues, but it's great. And that's more the side that I lean into. Obviously, we're going to be kind in the comments if you want to. I'm also sitting on a bar stool and it's an interesting vibe, guys. Anyways, we are gonna be talking though about Fourth Wing. So rewind, freeze, go back with me to, I believe this was around the fall of 2024. I had just recently started becoming a stay-at-home mom. I was a full-time math teacher for almost a decade. And when my son turned 18 months, I decided that I was gonna be stay-at-home with him for a variety slew of reasons we won't get into in this video. But I discovered this book, Fourth Wing. It was one that kind of hit Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube world, and people were talking about this book. I thought to myself, well, what's this book about? What's the deal? Why is it so interesting? Why are people ranting and raving about it? Apparently it's about dragons. That intrigues me. And I'll be honest with you, even in high school and college, I read a ton of fantasy. So for me, I'm like, this is a fantasy series about dragons and their riders, and what could go wrong? Let me tell you what could go right. I read this book and it instantly took me back to reading the Eragon series in high school. I will post a picture beside me. If you were a homeschool kid growing up in the 2000s, you know what series I'm talking about. I'm honestly really tempted to reread it and compare and contrast it with Fourth Wing, which I think would be a fun time. Anyways, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros and literally was hooked. And I was lucky because after Fourth Wing had come out, we move on to the second book in the series, Iron Flame. Now, say what you want to about Iron Flame. We can even have a debate in the comments about it, but I was a little bit shocked, but I was also already highly invested in this series. And I had finished reading Iron Wing, and then talks of an author named Sarah J. Maas came into picture. Now, this is a very kooky way and setup to talk about books that just stay with me. I had finished Iron Flame. It had ended in the worst ever cliffhanger, and I just went, wow, this was such a fun time. I enjoyed it. Yes, was the writing interesting at times, hard to understand, but listen, we can debate that in another video. I think that this clever idea and series got me as a mom back into reading, and I will give Fourth Wing that credit every single day of the week. I absolutely love Fourth Wing. I love Xaden and Violet. Iron Flame, I had to reread a second time to truly appreciate the depth and character arc that these characters went. Now, I'm sure you're probably thinking, what's your opinion on Onyx? So I rated Fourth Wing 5 stars, Iron Flame 4. I would probably put this at a 3.75, maybe a 4. Let me tell you about Onyx real quick. I read this recently when it came out, and I want to reread it one day. Today is not that day. Honestly, I'll probably wait until the 4th book now and then do a reread of this series. Onyx Storm. The first 10% was rough. The last 10% was really rough, but the 80% in between was amazing. I loved the adventure, the hype. Maybe if I get enough requests to do another video about Fourth Wing, I will in a later time. But Onyx Storm, I just felt like my brain was in a storm and in a tailspin. So that's all I'll say about that. But needless to say, this is the first series I'm talking about in this video, and that is Fourth Wing. When you read this series, it's pretty simple to follow. You are going to read Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm, and yeah, you're gonna have a good time with it overall. This is actually the first time as a reader that I ever read a book with advice. Maybe we can talk about that as a mom later on down the road, but it was an interesting time, let me tell you. But I love this series. series. I think it is so fun. It's got its issues, of course. I have other fantasy romantasy series now that I would rank above this, but still, this was my gateway drug into the romantasy world on Bookstagram and BookTube, and I actually follow a lot of people that read these books, and I don't judge. I love them so much. So that is the first series that really kind of sparked my interest in getting back into romantasy fantasy genre. Now, let's talk about the next series that really just made me go, oh shoot, I love this genre, and it really is typically about 50 to 60% of my reading life as a mom, and I'm not ashamed about it. So I read Fourth Wing, and then a lovely friend of mine was like, have you read ACOTAR? Now, this is not the time or place to talk about Sarah J. Maas in its entirety, but to be honest with you, I probably will record another video, maybe change settings, but me wearing the same outfit, because this is when I have time to record, and talk about Sarah J. Maas and her work and ACOTAR as a whole, my thought, my theories of what the next book is going to be about. That's not going to be this video. Instead, I am though going to talk about another fantasy series that really like propelled and skyrocketed my reading journey. So I read Fourth Wing, had a friend go, you should read Sarah J. Maas. You like Fourth Wing, you would like Sarah J. Maas. And I honestly think that is a pretty true statement for the most part. You can disagree with me in the comments if you want. Okay, so enter in Throne of Glass. I'm not gonna deep dive Throne of Glass today. I feel like that would just take me a long time. Now granted, am I gonna make a video about it? Absolutely. I love this series. I love just everything about it. Okay, so here is what happened. I read Fourth Wing, was like, I'm, I guess, officially a reader again. Let's find other books like it that are fun, exciting, and interesting. So I started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is ACOTAR. I'll post like a little image beside me, and I started reading that one. Then I went from that one to starting A Court of Mist and Fury, and wisely enough, starting Throne of Glass. Let me tell you, this was just not a good idea. You probably are watching on the other end and going, you're silly. You're not smart. You're not thinking clearly. You don't understand Sarah J. Maas as a writer, and I really did not. And I had a sweet friend tell me, finish A Court of Mist and Fury, which I did. I finished A Court of Mist and Fury, loved it, but said, you know, I need to pick one series or the other, let the longer series that she has and conquer that. So I paused ACOTAR, which some of you are going to like audibly gasp in hearing me say that, but I have no regret, guys. I have no regret. This is not about ACOTAR. So the next full series that I read was Throne of Glass. And let me tell you guys, I could just do a whole deep dive into this series, why I love it so much. Probably will be future content. But I have to say this series gave me so many just little glimpses into Sarah J. Maas as an author. It also showed me that, and this is true because of her recent Call Her Daddy interview. I haven't watched. But anyways, she talked specifically about J.R. Tolkien and all of his work. You can see that seep into this series. You have never read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, just the initial trilogy, you need to truly understand like the beauty that these books have and how his world and his idea seeped from a female perspective onto a different world and story and timeline are these books. So we have in our first book, Selena Sardothian. She is the world's best assassin. Don't know if it's quite convincing in the first book. We'll get into that in a minute. But I read this and I was, let's just say, very intrigued. Similar to my feelings on A Court of Thorns and Roses. It wasn't amazing, but I was like, this is really interesting and unique about a girl who is a woman who really wants to prove something. And there's so much of her that I just felt like is me deep down in the progresses of my soul. And so I read this book and was like, oh, I like this. It's not super spicy, which I appreciated at the time. As I'm learning about myself as a reader and realizing I don't like crazy spicy books in general. And so I really enjoyed this book. Rated it 3.5 stars, but was intrigued. Then I moved on to Crown of Midnight, which I have to say, rereading it again for a second time, there are some things in it that I'm catching and realizing. But the first time I read Crown of Midnight, I was like, I'm hooked. This is so crazy and wild what she's doing, particularly towards the end of this book and the pathway that Selena is going to go on and go down, and you find out more about who she is and what she does. And I just, again, was totally hooked. Similar vibes with, ironically, A Court of Mist and Fury. You read that book and you just go, oh shoot, this is crazy. That's kind of how I felt about Crown of Midnight. Next up, I read in this series, Assassin's Blade. I am somebody who does believe you should read this book as the third in the series. This is technically a prequel of Throne of Glass. It happens before we meet Selena in Throne of Glass. It gives her past, all the things that she's been hiding from you in the book, and you begin to see and understand why she does what she does, why she's just so rooted and frustrated, honestly. and also to like why she just struggles in her life and doesn't trust people. And yeah, you just see a whole other side. So I read Assassin's Blade, and by this point I was like, what is this series? This is gonna just put me on a spiral of wanting to read a series like this, reading books that have complicated, interesting, crazy characters, and you can't get enough. And that was Assassin's Blade. So I read this and was hooked. Then I get into Heir of Fire. Whoa. Like, this book just blew the entire series out of the water of proportions. Her just growth as a character, Selena in particular, and the things that she goes through, things you find out about her past, and things that you find out specifically about her generationally and her parents and her family. It was wild. It just took the storyline of Throne of Glass and just blew it wide open. You meet just some amazing characters like Rowan and other people, and you just really go, shoot, like, I'm stuck in this. You meet a witch in this book. There's like a witch storyline that begins to brew. That was punny, I know. But you meet a witch named Manon, and she's like just crazy insane. But yeah, Heir of Fire really just took the world and blew it wide open. You see so many characters. This is also where you get multiple POVs meaning points of views. In the Fourth Wing series, we don't really see that a lot. We see it like a little bit towards the end of each book. You kind of see it in Onyx Storm, but it's kind of like sprinkled in. But this is really where you see Sarah J. Maas bring in the POVs in this. You also see it in ACOTAR, but again, that's another series we'll talk about later. So I read Heir of Fire, literally read it, and as soon as I finished it, I started Queen of Shadows. Let me tell you about Queen of Shadows. This is really when the plot just doesn't thick it up in Heir of Fire. Queen of Shadows is this plot. I heard another booktuber describe it as kind of Avengers Assemble. You have all these different characters with different abilities and gifts, and they just all kind of come together and unite as one team, and that's pretty accurate. To be honest with you, I think about this as the Lord of the Rings. You have the Fellowship of the Ring where all the different characters come together, they travel for a while, and then they kind of split off and do their own thing. And that's sort of Heir of Fire, but then some of them reunite in this book, and they realize the bigger purpose behind Selena, what she's meant for, what she's to do, and everything just kind of comes to a crazy, insane plot world. You just feel like you're flying at moments. Like, this is just building and building and building and building and building, and then you get to some really crazy stuff with some of the main characters, and you just kind of hold on as best as you can for the ride. I remember finishing Queen of Shadows and going, what did I just read? Like, it's insanity, and I love this series. Like, I have to buy this series. This book was the one that made me go, okay, so we're gonna purchase this series. At this point in time, I was borrowing the series from my friend who told me about Sarah J. Maas, and I literally texted her and I said, I have to own this series. I have to buy every single book. Like, I can't just read this series once. This is going to be a series that I reread more. Anyways, so I read Queen of Shadows, just was insane. I cried when I finished it. It just is such a great series. And this is really like when you go, okay. But then you also look at the size and amount of pages of the next book and realize, I don't know what I got myself into. This is gonna be a hot minute. And spoiler alert, it was. So then I finished Queen of Shadows and moved finally on to Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn. Now, let me just say this. This is where the series really just like takes a whole other side, and you go, Sarah J. Maas is brilliant. Would never have thought to do this, honestly, if I was writing a series. And that's because these two books take place in the same timeline. Now, I'm actually currently rereading the series. I just finished Assassin's Blade and I'm on to Heir of Fire. This next time reading it through, I'm not gonna do this, but the first time I did the tandem read. Because both of these books take place in the same storyline, some readers decided, let's just make the book that we just like to hate on a little more on, and we combine them and you read them at the same time. Guys, I did this. Somehow I did this with my 8-month. Really was like his nap schedule was when I did this. And I just was like, this is crazy. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? It was really rough. It was basically reading a 1,500-page book, and it was great. I recommend it to some people depending on how you want to read this book. I will say, if you are a mom watching this, don't do the tandem read. Do Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. Let's talk about Empire. Empire of Storms, if you thought Queen of Shadows was insane, this book is insane. There are so many things that happen, so many plot lines like you wish and want to see, but then also the ending of this book. It put me in such a chill. I remember finishing it. I did the tandem read at the time, but I remember finishing this book and then finishing this book and going, going, I see why people do the tandem read. They do the tandem read because the book ends on an insane cliffhanger and you want to go straight back. You don't want to go reversal and go back in the timeline to read about another character and the journey he goes on, which is valid. But this time around, I'm going to be doing Empire of Thorns, Tower of Dawn, but I also know what's happening. So anyways, these two books were great. I personally think Tower of Dawn gets kind of a bad rap. It's actually nice because it slows down in the pace. You don't feel like you're sitting on the edge of a Ferrari and going 80 miles an hour in the plot. This one takes it at a much slower pace, but the growth in this book, the character that is brought back from maybe a prior book, it's crazy. It's so good. I think this one is a very underrated book, at least in my opinion, in the Throne of Glass series. So through this video in time. Just keep rambling, but Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn were next. And then finally, you guys, Kingdom of Ash. This book is almost 1,000 pages, which apparently you don't have enough glue or book binding to make an 1,000-page book. So Sarah J. Maas actually had to cut some pages out of this book. I can't imagine that. Like, that's insane. But this is Kingdom of Ash. This is the final book in the series. And by this point, I realized, man, how am I ever gonna top this? How am I gonna find another series that just makes me this passionate about reading? The growth, the characters, the themes of the book itself, just like, wow. And the main character, her journey to this point, it's pretty remarkable. And it's one where I don't think I have found one to do it again yet. Although there is another series I have left to talk about because it's one that I just couldn't not talk about on here of getting me back into reading. But man, this series, when I finished Kingdom of Ash, I cried like a baby. And then I went, okay, I have the first 3 books. I have to purchase the rest because of how good it was. So we'll go back to Fourth Wing real quick. Fourth Wing was the book that got me all started into reading. Throne of Glass was the series that made me go, I'm officially a romantasy fantasy girly. Am I ashamed about it? No. I love it. And I am a mom who wants an escape, wants a getaway, and these are the books that do it. Now, since that journey has transpired, I have read so many other books and I'm excited to share, talk about other genres. I don't just read fantasy and romantasy, but it is a pretty huge chunk of what I love to read because truly it is where all bets are off. An author can do whatever they want, but they can also take a fictional character and make you see things that apply to your life, things that you can do. Up until this point, and I would include Violet Sorrengail, she's the main character in Fourth Wing, I would say that Selena made me, you know who Aelin is. Selena really made me go, man, like women are insane. We are insane humans and beings that God created to do beautiful, incredible things. Fourth Wing plot. Let me give it to you really fast because I forgot to talk about it earlier. So with Fourth Wing, we have Violet Sorrengail. She is meant to, let's just say, not be a dragon rider. She is weak. She has an autoimmune chronic illness disease that is kind of hinted at in this book. And she is not meant to be a dragon rider, but her mom wants her to be and basically forces her to become a dragon rider. You really have 3 options or 3 colleges and she has to go to the dragon college in a sense. The school name is probably somewhere in the back here. People are going to be really upset with me. She was supposed to go into the scribe quadrant, but she goes into the writer's quadrant and it trains at the Navarre, which is a dragon school, and she bonds with a dragon and it's just kind of all about her story. It is very intense, so good, and you kind of follow her all throughout this trilogy. You like dragons, if you like that kind of plot line, you're gonna really enjoy this series. Okay, so we've talked about Fourth Wing, we've talked about Throne of Glass. They're kind of spewed out on my countertops. The final series we're gonna talk about is the Kindred first series by Penn. Let me just tell you this. I was trying to think, what's some series, specific romantasy series on my bookshelf? Romantasy, by the way, is fantasy where romance is one of the main plot lines. I would say Throne of Glass kind of becomes that. Fourth Wing definitely is, and Kindred first definitely is. If you like enemies to lovers, you will read this and just jaw-dropping like popcorn. This is one of those authors where it is crazy to me that this is the first series that she's written and how she can truly just, how she can really surprise me in a way and create a world and a storyline. We meet our main character, DM. DM is not a favorite of everybody who reads these books. I probably give her a lot of credit and enjoy her as a female main character. Some people, they get frustrated with her, but that's their own journey when they read this series. Some people love Luther. Luther is a descendant and he has all of these abilities and strength. I haven't read this book in a long time, but Descended is basically who rules the mortal world, and she lives in a very poor village, and DM finds out some things about her mother's past, and she works with the people in the kingdom, specifically with Luther, and she just begins to unravel and find and discover things about herself. Very similar to Throne of Glass, but completely like different different environment, different trajectory, I would say, and definitely like different personality and character altogether. But you really get to know DM briefly in this first book. This is also Spark of the Everflame by Penn. I love the way this book looks, so beautiful. And this book actually started out on Kindle Unlimited and was self-published by the author, and then the book series got up because it went rampant, let me tell you. This is another series where I saw people start to post about it. My same friend who recommended Sarah J. Maas said, okay, I just read through this series and you should read it, and it was the Kindred Curse. So we really just should thank my friend Mallory. Thank you for being the sponsor of this video. But she and I kind of together read through the Kindred's Curse, and it was a fun time. So I read the first book and actually bought the first book, and I was like, this is intriguing. I like it. It wasn't super like going, whoa, amazing. Fourth Wing, I feel like had more of that just instant, I'm hooked, I can't put this book down. This one was similar to Throne of Glass, where you're starting it and going, okay, I'm intrigued, like, let's read more. And boy, did it get juicy. Because next up we have, I'm like this. I don't know what I'm doing, you guys, be real. Next up we have Glow of the Everflame. And this is one of my friend's favorite books, not the one that recommended it to me, but my neighbor loves this book. And I would have to agree with her. I feel like the arc of Luther and DM, and of them working out all of their woes, really being true enemies in the first book, and then they start to realize, oh, hello, Luther, and have feelings for one another. But complicated, it's complex, and you really see it in this book. And this book doesn't have as much high stakes, but you really start to just go, oh shoot, like this is kind of a big deal. There's more that's going on than just what was in Spark of the Everflame. You really become hooked, and you really just go, oh, like this plot buildup is building, and I want to see where this goes. So there's Glow of the Everflame. And then next up that I read was Seed of the Everflame. This book, oh my gosh. First of all, if you compare all three books, it is clearly the chunkiest of them. It's basically, hold up, oh, not quite. It could be the first and second book combined, but Seed of the Everflame. I just recently bought this in hardback, finished the series, and let me just say, this is where you begin to travel in the world. You're not kind of staying in one particular place, and you're really starting to see DM and Luther, their relationship get tested in a way, and they have to kind of become unlikely foes, unlikely alliance. And so you kind of start to see where it builds. And then Penn, she leaves you on a massive. And by the way, the fourth book isn't out yet. Clearly new to this whole journey of booktube and not knowing how to charge my camera. So this second little mini part is going to be very well lit. Thanks to my videographer husband. Okay, so we were talking about the Kindred's first series, and we were specifically talking about the third book. So this book, first of all, it's just absolutely insane. One, it's literally almost the same size. Actually, let me do it this way. It's almost the same size as the first two books in the series combined, which is just so funny to me, but also it's really when the plot just begins to go into so many different places and spaces within the world. You literally are taken out of the town that DM lives in, and you go on kind of a pretty crazy intense ride the whole way through. I personally loved this book. I don't know if I would consider it my favorite of the series, but it captured my attention just enough. The slow burn between the two main characters, DM and Luther, are just like perfection. Once you realize you like enemies to lovers, like this is the series that you've got to read. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, which is really nice. That was the first place that I read it, and then as I was reading the second book, I just realized I have to buy this series. It's too pretty not to get, too amazing not to get, and it left me with pretty much the same similar vibes as Sarah J. Maas books and also Fourth Wing books. So that is the Kindred's Curse series. You're gonna read Spark of the Everflame first, Glow of the Everflame, and Burn of the Everflame. So that is the Kindred's Curse series. Again, I absolutely love all three of these series, and I wanted to do a specific video talking about the romantasy fantasy genre of books that really just was a pivotal point, not only in my reading journey as an adult, but also just as a mom wanting to incorporate reading as a hobby. And I would highly recommend, if you are into fantasy at all, reading these three series or starting with one of them. If I were to kind of go back and say which one to start with, I think I would would say 3 things. Number 1, if you are really into dragons in fantasy world, if you read Eragon as a high school student like I did, if you really like just the plot to move relatively quickly within the first book, I would say start with the Fourth Wing series. Now, having said that, you will, as you go through the series, just become more invested, but also be a little bit frustrated with some of the directions that the writer takes. I'm not going to sit here and say that they are bad or wrong necessarily, but people have very strong opinions about this series as a whole. I honestly just view it as the first fantasy series that the author has written, and I give her a lot more grace. And I have to say, she created a really daggum great world. Did I just say daggum? I think I did. But anyway, she created a really great world. Kindred's Curse. I think you should read this if you are wanting a shorter length series. Now, this series is not complete yet. It looks like it's a trilogy, but there is a 4th book that is being written. It actually is being edited currently and will be published hopefully very soon. We all who have read this are going, please bring the 4th book. But so this is an incomplete series, so keep that in mind. But this is one that I would say if you have never read a true romantasy, you want lower spice level, but you want an enemies to lovers trope, which means that the female main character and the male main character absolutely hate each other, but have to work together, and then it just gets really complicated, you would really like this series. It's excellent, it's well written, well paced, and I really enjoyed this one, if you can't already tell. And then finally, who I would recommend this series for? Well, this is for somebody that is a nerd of classic literature like myself. You might be somebody that has read Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and you love a series that is going to interweave beautiful aspects of the main character throughout the book. You want something that is a little more complicated, complex. You like, even, dare I say, more of like a high fantasy profile. I would actually say to read Throne of Glass. Now, keep in mind, as I've said before, the 1st and 2nd book is a newer book for the author, but once she gets into Assassin's Blade and on, you are going to be hooked to the edge of your seat. It's so good, and it definitely is a lot more pages comparatively speaking to these other 2 series, but it is well worth the read. So I hope you enjoyed some of my pros, if you will, about Romantasy series, and stay tuned for another video. Cheers.